With Progressive's Home Quote Explorer, you can check if you're paying too much for home insurance, because giving you options is the right thing to do.
Oh yeah, like bringing brownies to a dinner party. But I never bring brownies with nuts, because not everyone likes nuts, so they wouldn't eat those brownies. And even people who do like nuts will still eat brownies without them. Why? Because they're brownies.
But still, it's the right thing to do. So compare rates with Progressive's Home Quote Explorer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and third-party insurers. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're here to continue our discussion of That One Play. And we have a cool one for you tonight. It is the 2008 Texas Stadium finale, in which the Ravens beat the Cowboys 33-24, highlighted by a couple of long touchdown runs, but Willis McGahee's 77-yard touchdown run with just a couple of minutes left in the game is the one that we're going to talk about tonight. Here to join me on that is Dan Ibrahimi. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ken. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. Thanks for suggesting this. Surprisingly, it took a long time for someone to pick this. It was like 25th or 30th on the list of such shows, but really appreciate it. It's a big play in Ravens history. Why did you pick it?
I think it came at a pretty seminal moment for me in my Ravens fanhood. I was a freshman in high school at the time, and that was just kind of a time when I was hanging out with all of my childhood friends, watching the game. And obviously that was such a pivotal season, 2 years after that, the high of 2006 and after the dizzying low of 2007, and then just everything that 2008 had been up to that point. This kind of felt like the perfect game to encapsulate that wild regular season.
Yeah, Flacco and Rice, obviously their first years and 1-2 picks and great start to Joe's career. Certainly a lot of foreshadowing in terms of postseason success. The Ravens had just lost a very tough ball game the week before.
Right. I think every Ravens fan remembers that one. It was arguably the start of those really tough times the Ravens were having with the Steelers. Obviously, Roethlisberger takes the team in under 2 minutes. He takes them 92 yards, and Santonio Holmes maybe got across the goal line, maybe he didn't, but I think we all remember that one all too well.
Yeah, it's a strange play because it was reviewed, and I don't see how you could say, with incontrovertible proof or whatever that it was across the end zone if he had at that point. But anyway, they gave it to him, and the Steelers won the game 13-9, and that was a darn shame, obviously. So the Ravens go into this game in Dallas, and they do not yet have their playoff fate secure. In fact, it took them until the last week of the season to secure it. But they went into this game, I believe. Let me think about where they were. They were 9-5 going into it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's correct. They ended at 11-5, won their last two games.
Okay. So they're playing the Cowboys. They actually ended up being a very tight race with one of the few times an 11-5 team was kept out of the playoffs. And that was the Patriots, who ended up not making the playoffs that year, remarkably, despite the 11-5 record. So the Ravens needed this game in Dallas, and then they needed the next one as well against Jacksonville at home. But where were they in the game? Give us kind of the setup on the big play here.
So it had definitely been a weird game up to that point. They had actually only scored one touchdown, but Matt Stover, obviously the Dallas native, as we all heard so much heading into that game, selling newspapers outside of the stadium in his childhood, was 4 for 4 on field goals, but they were all pretty short field goals. In order, it was 26, 29, 37, and 35. So there was definitely some frustration from the Ravens up to that point with just a total lack of red zone success. In fact, on their only touchdown, it was a 13-yard strike from Flacco to Mason. And they only got it because they did a fake punt. One of the very, very few that Sam Cook ran in his career. He ran for 9 yards on, I believe it was 4th and 6. And that only came 2 plays after a LaRon McClain fumble that Derek Mason recovered. So it was really, really interesting kind of where the Ravens were at that point. Dallas wasn't really playing well either, though.
Yeah, one thing I remember about Mason is that he was playing hurt in that game. I kind of had a problem with the arm, and they were talking about it. And remarkable when a fumble recovery happens by the offensive team in the secondary. Offensive teams recover a fair number of fumbles on sacks because they have offensive linemen around, and they sometimes will fall on a ball if it bounces a significant distance. But they don't recover very many when they're in the secondary, and usually a receiver's been tackled to do that. You know, you're not supposed to have two receivers in the same area, but somehow Mason got to that point downfield, made the recovery, kind of got a lucky bounce a little bit, and then the Ravens went on to score.
Absolutely. That was one of my favorite games from Derek Mason as a Raven. Caught all 6 targets for 66 yards and a score, and I think the Ravens needed every single one of them to be in that position.
Efficient game, certainly. In that 2008 season, what I remember about Derek Mason a lot was he lived on that little 10-yard hitch route. He just came back. He did have a little bit of speed, so I guess that he was still, thought to be a little bit of a deep threat. But he lived off that back shoulder and was turning around to catch the ball. He and Flacco definitely had a good connection there. Flacco certainly had the arm strength to get the ball outside there and make the back shoulder throw a viable and not particularly risky affair. And Mason was very good at it.
Absolutely. That was so huge in Flacco's development, being able to rely on a proven veteran like Mason on a route like that.
Almost like having a tight end is supposed to be that security blanket, except in him, it's an outside receiver that's the guy.
Absolutely. And his actual tight end wasn't a bad security blanket and heap at that point either.
Yeah. All right. So score is now the Cowboys have closed the lead to 19-17 with 3:50 to play. So this is a ball game now, and the Ravens have got to get a first down or maybe a couple of first downs to seal the game, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And at that point, the Ravens had just seen a 9-point lead shrink down to 2, as you mentioned. And I don't think Cowboys fans at that point would have been all that happy with how their team had played. Before that, Terrell Owens 7-yard score from Romo to close the lead to 2. They had only scored 1 touchdown, and they only had to go, I think it was 3 or 4 yards, because DeMarcus Ware had a strip sack of Flacco right in the opening 4 minutes of the game. Mm-hmm. So it had certainly been an interesting game up to that point, with each team kind of having a frustrating performance.
Yeah, the Cowboys had a tough game. They only had 16 first downs in the game, 4.8 yards per play. So not an exciting game from them in terms of the offense. And honestly, a lot of that was on Romo not having a particularly good game with 2 picks.
Right. And I had kind of forgotten how bad that first one was, that actually set up the DeMarcus Ware strip sack on Flacco. I think that was only 2nd and 3 from the 49-yard line, and Romo just kind of launched it in a triple coverage, and one of the 3 Ravens in the area was Ed Reed. So that was one of the worst decisions I feel like you'll see.
Ed Reed had a long return in this game where was it 2nd and 3? I got to look back on this again and just see. It was there's a sack on 3rd and 10. That's not the one. Well, I'll find it. But what I remember Romo saying after the fact was that's just a punt. That's thrown all the way down the field. But then Ed Reed got his hands on the ball, and that meant there was a good punt return involved.
Exactly. And when I initially watched it, I kind of thought it was a punt too, but I believe it was only 2nd down, and the Cowboys had the ball at midfield and really only needed to go a short way for a first down. So the decision making was really curious. Romo was still pretty young at that point. I think that was his 2nd full season starting for the Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken. So just a really kind of curious decision from him.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where you'll say, ta-ta T-Mobile, because we've got more reliable home internet that's a whole lot faster. In fact, 10 times faster. No, seriously, because we have real internet backed by our fiber-powered network. And T-Mobile, well, they just have a 5G cellular network. So act now to get superior home internet. Find your perfect speed with prices starting at just $19.99 a month for 24 months. Terms and conditions apply. Go to breezeline.com to learn more.
The Venture X card from Capital One gives you premium travel benefits, perfect for seeing Taylor Swift The Eras Tour. Presented by Capital One. Ooh, I do love her. Earn 5 times miles on flights and 10 times miles on hotels through Capital One Travel.
Enjoy your stay in Suite 13.
Whoa, 13? That's Taylor's lucky number. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
92% of households that join Peloton early in the year are still active a year later.
If you love cycling.
Peloton actually makes a treadmill, too.
Okay, if you love sprinting.
You could try out a power walk or a scenic hike in Scotland.
Let me just clear my entire schedule.
Hey, we're nothing if not flexible. With classes from 5 minutes to 30, Peloton can fit into any schedule. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try the Peloton Tread risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.
It's been a lot better announcer than he was a quarterback anyway. So
Absolutely.
I really appreciate him as an announcer. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, he's kind of growing a little stale to me. I think right when he started, it was the Super Bowl between the LA Rams and the Patriots in that snooze fest of a Super Bowl where the main play was Gronkowski catching a long pass down the far sideline and Romo announcing that before it would happen after a game of no long pass plays was one of the more impressive things I've ever seen from an announcer.
He does something when a quarterback goes to the line of scrimmage where he suddenly like kind of transforms himself into the decision making like of the quarterback. I really like that. I think it's a fresh element to announcing that I think is very positive. So he comes to the line and goes, okay, it's 3rd and 2. I'm looking at my receiver over here. I see the tight end is here. I just love that. I really, I've come to really appreciate that. And I like another thing I like about it is the variety of announcing styles that can be born out of something like Romo being a success. Is, you've got now the Mannings doing their little thing as a sidelight, which is fun. It's definitely a kind of a cool thing. And you've got others that can get on a network TV and make it work. That'd be like Romo. But anyway, I think it's been a big positive for football. I've been happy to have him out of the game of football with all the drama that went with him. But the announcing career, honestly, very cool.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Take us to the run itself.
So the run itself was really interesting. I think the first thing that kind of caught me was just who was on the Ravens offensive line at this point. It's kind of interesting to go back to a time before that those really kind of just couple years between the Ravens' 2 best offensive linemen ever, and Jonathan Ogden and Marshall Yanda. And this offensive line certainly was that. It was filled with guys who weren't really necessarily known as Ravens when it was all said and done. From right to left, it was Willie Anderson, Chris Chester, Jason Brown, Ben Grubbs, and Jared Gaither. So that was kind of the first thing that struck me. But basically, I think the star of the play, other than McGahee, was probably Jason Brown. He made a beautiful block on, I believe it was Brady James with Marcus Spears right behind him. And then Chris Chester also had a nice block on Zach Thomas in the second to last game of what was now officially a Hall of Fame career. After that, Willis was pretty much just downhill. He obviously, those aforementioned blocks were on linebackers, and then Willis was just sprinting downhill through the secondary for a full 70 yards. So that was really impressive. One of McGahee's better runs in Baltimore. I believe he had a similar one at the end of the next season in Oakland.
Put him in the playoffs. That was a great run too. It might have been also 77. In fact, it was somewhat like in the 70s. But I saw the same thing you did in terms of the play, and that offensive line was fantastic. I mean, Chris Chester was a hell of an offensive lineman for starters. And I think he made definitely one of the key plays because he climbed to level 2 and made a nice block on a linebacker. On the other side, I'm trying to remember if a safety, maybe Hamlin for the Cowboys, slipped slightly on the play, which didn't allow him. But I mean, McGahee was gone, and they were so far packed to the line of scrimmage to stop the run. They were completely committed to it that it really left them in a bad position to execute against a well-executed, well-blocked play. And the Ravens have still to this day a great point of attack rushing offense that can pierce a very shallow defense like that. And it didn't take much of a mistake on the side of the Cowboys to make this happen. It was mostly just a very well blocked play, as I recall it.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And for me, not to get too far off track, but it was really, I just feel like for both teams, it kind of came to define the next couple of years. The Ravens obviously experienced a lot of playoff success immediately after that, and Dallas, to put it mildly, did not. But, that was a year when the NFC was kind of wide open. A 4 seed in the Arizona Cardinals hosted the NFC Championship game that year. And you just kind of wonder, looking back on Romo's full playing career, whether that could have been a year when they made some noise and potentially made a conference championship game.
Yeah, that would have been his chance. And that Cardinals team almost won the Super Bowl. They certainly took one of the luckiest plays in Super Bowl history at the end of that first half to basically win the game or lose the game for them, I should say. Two things about the run. First of all, we won't talk about McLean's run. We'll save that for another day, but he ran 82 or 83 yards. The next play, the Ravens ran from scrimmage because the Cowboys again drove for a touchdown. The Ravens are going to need one more first down, so they ran a real play. McLean goes the distance. Another case of penetrating a defense. Of course, they had a head coach who was defensive minded in Bum Phillips. That's not right.
I think that was his dad. He was the big tuna.
And who am I thinking of?
Wade, I think.
Wade Phillips. There you go. Wade Phillips just said, I've never seen anything like it. Well, he's never were truer words spoken. The two longest runs by opponents in Dallas Stadium history, in Texas Stadium history, were those two runs. And it was open in 1971. It got closed in 2008. In those 38 seasons, those two plays consecutively on the last two plays from scrimmage were the longest runs in by an opponent in Texas Stadium history. So very, very cool place, a lot of history. And I tell you what, it was great to see it shut down like that and have the Cowboys greats walk on the field like that after a loss. Just was really sweet. I know for me personally, and I know for the Ravens players.
Absolutely. And one additional crazy thing about that is that the play before that, between the Owens touchdown catch and the McGahee run, Yaman Figures actually fumbled the kickoff. And for a second there, it didn't really look certain that the Ravens recovered it. So, I mean, that could have just changed everything. It is one of those things that, most people have forgotten about that could have changed the trajectory of the next few seasons for both teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One story I always like to tell when I talk about this game is that Texas Stadium, they tore it down or they imploded it eventually. I don't know how long it took them to destroy it, but they needed the space. And what they needed the space for is so Dallas, it's not even funny. They needed a space to house the materials for an expansion of the interstate system. And if you've been to the Midwest, or even if you know kind of how the Midwest laid out, extremely flat. The Dallas area, very flat. You'd be at a hotel, you can see for miles and miles. It's flat. And so what they have to do to build interstates in a place like that is they have to build all sorts of ramps and bridges, and it takes a lot of effort to do that. And of course, they needed a ton of materials for that. I just thought that was hilarious to me, was that they had to use the area from this stadium to just house those materials for expansion of the interstate. Anyway, Dan, really appreciate having you on. Tell folks if they want to, where can they talk football with you online?
I'm an infrequent Twitter user. DRE8820 is my username. I don't use it very much, but I'm a huge fan of your show. I try to listen to every episode. So thank you so much for having me on, Ken. This was awesome.
Really appreciate that, Dan. You obviously came very well prepared today, and I always appreciate that, and like having a lively discussion about a game like this that's dear to both of us, obviously. Other folks out there, if you want to be on an episode like this, just like Dan, little research is great, but you be you. So just tell me your perspective on an important play. Maybe you were there. Maybe it was at some pivotal crossroads of your own life. Maybe it's something about the Ravens history that you think it's central to. Whatever your viewpoint is, that's great. I'd love to hear from you. DMs are always open on Twitter with your idea, and I'll get back to you very quickly. Dan, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where you'll say, "Ta-ta, T-Mobile, our home internet is just plain better. More reliable and faster because we put internet first. If there's network congestion, we won't slow your internet down like T-Mobile does to help their cell customers." And right now, you can try out a true internet experience with BreezeLine's reliable and fast fiber-powered home internet. Find your perfect speed with prices starting at $19.99 a month for 24 months. Terms and conditions apply. Go to breezeline.com to learn more.
At Kroger, shopping with pickup and delivery is the same as shopping in-store. Same low prices, deals, and rewards on the same high-quality items. It's one small click for groceries, one big win for busy families everywhere. Start your cart today at Kroger.com. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
And right now, stock up on your favorites during the 10 for 10 sale. Mix and match participating items and get 10 for just $10 with your card. Kroger, fresh for everyone.